EverQuest's first fan gathering in a decade was a mixture of a small, intimate multi-day event for those willing and able to afford the quite high ticket prices and make it out all the way to San Diego, as well as a much more affordable 6-hour-long live stream that was, well, completely free for EverQuest fans all over the world. The event itself was light on huge reveals, but big on emotion, camaraderie, and legacy. We got a date for EverQuest 2's Origin server, expansion name reveals, and some teases. But combine that with the AMA we had earlier this year and the Pax East panel, and we actually have quite a bit of information on things like player numbers, their development focuses, the future of EverQuest, and even an EverQuest 3 confirmation.
Jen, what else is coming up?
So let's talk a little bit about the new EverQuest game. I know some of you are super excited to hear some more about that, but I don't really have a big update for you. I have a small update. We've been pitching and ideating on the next installment in the multiverse of EverQuest, and the project is in its infancy. So many things can change between now and when we're ready to publicly talk about it. So, no, it's in development. Well, we don't call it in development. It's in ideation. So, yeah, we're continuing to work on it and see what sticks to the wall, right? Throwing spaghetti ideas at the wall. But again, project's still in its infancy, and if you would like to help us out, we are hiring. So yeah, if you think that you'd make a good fit for any one of our positions, we do have all of our positions posted up on daybreakgames.com careers.
So I rolled all that info into this video as quick a way as I can, but I'm wordy as hell, so yeah, it'll get longer than it needs to be. Starting with Fippy Fest, it was hosted by none other than the EverQuest show's Fading, who did an absolutely incredible job. The keynote largely focused on some of the really fun facts about this game, like that including development time, EverQuest has been going for 28 years. Seeing as it's been live for 25 years, that puts EverQuest's initial dev time at about 3 years based on this comment. And before we start talking about development times, that was a different time frame. Since EverQuest launched, they have added 400 pieces of music to EverQuest for a total of 13 hours of playtime. Not to be outdone, EverQuest 2 has added 700 pieces of music with over 15 hours of playtime. So here is your little PSA that yes, you can actually turn off the combat music in EverQuest and you can hear the other music instead of that over and over and over again on a loop. Between the two games, there are 50 expansions with 2 more on the horizon, over 9 million characters created in EverQuest alone since it was launched. But the real excitement of the keynote for many was the announcement of the EverQuest 2 Origin server launch date. And goddamn, it's fast. It's like literally next week. It's Wednesday of next week. EverQuest 2's first Origin server that was years in the making will be launching on June 19th, 2024 at noon PST. It will be interesting to find out if this server will be as successful as EverQuest Teak server has been, a server that still occasionally sees small queues a few weeks after launch, despite them raising the server cap. The Origin server in a lot of ways is a seminal moment for EverQuest 2, an attempt to recapture some of the magic of early EverQuest 2, the group-centric nature of it, and something that the EverQuest 2 team described in the QA as, "You can solo, but you'll probably die." That's a direct quote, and I couldn't be more excited.
Thing that me and Robert Fouts have been discussing for years. We started discussing it when we launched our first group of TLEs. A lot of players who were playing would say, "Hey, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I expected. I thought you guys were going to give us like the original game." And we spent a lot of time talking about how we would accomplish that. And then finally it came to a point where everyone agreed that it was time to, try to do that. So, but yeah, it's a simpler time for EverQuest 2, but it's also more hardcore. Like, so it's an interesting balance, right? Because in the current iteration of Origins, you can solo, you'll probably die a lot. You know, you're better off with another player. And that seems to be the theme of the entire Fippy Fest. This, you know, is you're always better off with another player. So, I mean, that's right. That's the core of our games and why they're still here and why they exist is because we want you to play with other players.
Oh, and if you need a little bit more art for your walls, stuff like this, well, they actually had a little bit of a moment during the keynote that you might be interested in.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I have...
Oh, she's a magician. I didn't know she played a magician class.
I have these lovingly drawn new commissions of the cloth maps from the original artist, Rick Schmitz. We have one from EverQuest 1, and these are amazing. They feel great. And obviously, they're pretty large. And then we also have one for EverQuest 2.
And these were done by Rick Schmitz, the original artist.
Yes,
is that correct?
that is correct.
And they look incredible, and they do feel quite nice. And these are going to be available in the swag store?
Yes, they're available in the swag store right now.
So they went live this morning. So if you're on the stream, you can hit the swag store. Very cool looking. We don't even have copies of these, so this is amazing.
Yes, I have already ordered the EverQuest one, and I'm pretty sure my wallet's going to hate me, but I'm probably going to get the EverQuest 2 one as well. Moving on to the expansions, because that's where we got the most reveals. EverQuest's new expansion will be titled The Outer Brood, and it will include a dragon of tremendous size. In fact, the dragon, boasting 4 wings and honestly just a really freaking cool appearance, is the largest living NPC ever added to EverQuest 1. The only in-game NPC larger includes a freaking zone within it, the Mechamatic Guardian from Secrets of Fadeware, though it's not technically alive. We didn't get much in the way of details about this particular expansion, but there was one tantalizing tease from a lore perspective. The dragon shown is not from Norath. It'll be interesting to see what this means for the future of EverQuest, and if this is another brood of Vishan, perhaps from another planet. Granted, a different planet isn't exactly new to EverQuest. Even a new planet Vishan populated isn't new. But dragons are always pretty freaking cool. EverQuest 2's next expansion will be titled Scars of Destruction. Initially, this got me thinking of EverQuest Seeds of Destruction expansion, but interestingly, it seems like there's a lot more to it, pointing to the recent uprising of the Gnolls in Antonica, leading into the Prelude event this August, dealing with growing tensions and uprisings throughout Norath. It was further teased that this might have something specifically to do with Velius, and even more specifically, Western Wastes. A Western Waste that will look very different. A Western Waste holding secrets in the Dragon Necropolis. But the expansion won't be limited to Velius, and you'll be making some less than savory alliances. It was here that we got to learn a little bit of just how difficult it could be for the teams of EverQuest 2 to make lore-rich expansions. Because EverQuest and EverQuest 2 have a branch in where their lore stops coinciding, and that's Planes of Power, where essentially your actions in the Planes of Power are kind of reset in EverQuest, but they carry over in EverQuest 2, thus creating the Shattering and all these things, all these cataclysmic events. So whenever they're looking at lore, whenever they're looking at creating a lore thing in EverQuest 2, they have to go back to the established lore of the first EverQuest all the way up to EverQuest. That doesn't just mean the game lore, that doesn't just mean the things that have happened in expansions, but also all of the pre-written history of Norath, the things that go expand well before EverQuest, and I guess EverQuest Online Adventures. Kind of a difficult thing to think about. EverQuest and EverQuest 2 have largely had 2 big QAs this year. Earlier this year on the forums, and more recently during Fippyfest. Many of those questions were granular details like, Can mercs get auras? Will druids get a mana recovery post-death? And when can we have barbarian paladins? Which the answer was no barbarian paladins. Despite how cool kilts look, it's not allowed, sorry. But there were some larger thoughts and some larger inferences on how things work, which I'm gonna try and distill from both of these QAs because it kind of just plays out and gives an idea of what the team's focuses are. Hint, it's the live game, as well as what their limitations are. Hint, it's a small team on both games. The teams for both EverQuest and EverQuest 2 have some pretty big limitations on what they're able to work on, just based on the hands on deck. As such, they really have to focus and prioritize on content that is applicable to most players. And this is an interesting thing because what they talk about being applicable to most players throughout multiple different QA questions is max level content, not progression server type content or low level content, but max level content, meaning what they are seeing, if you're reading through the lines here, is that the bulk of EverQuest players are actually at max level playing the current game and getting the expansions and things like that, instead of just doing what a lot of us do, myself included, of replaying through like all of the TLPs and going and doing all of the older content, the level 20 content. But the limitations aren't surprising given the numbers we got from EG7 on who is actually working at Daybreak. For Darkpaw, they count a grand total of 53 people. That's 53 across EverQuest and EverQuest 2. With, I believe in the past, we've found that there's a bit more people working on EverQuest than EverQuest 2, but still in either way, when you split 50 people down the line, that's not much for continuing these games and continuing to create content for these games every year. Standing Stone, the other big studio across the way, boasts 60 people across their two titles, DDO and Lord of the Rings Online. Dimensional Inc., who are in charge of DCUO, well, they have 49 people. Though Darkpaw is currently hiring, and that's probably because they're considering a third title. The focus of these smaller teams appears to be live content and continuing to grow and expand the game while providing content for the largest number of players. That doesn't mean TLPs aren't important though, they are, but also they don't have plans for a WoW Season of Discovery style creation of content for level 20s and 30s when the max level is 120. But that might be something that is somewhat challenged by the success of the Teak server, and perhaps the Origin server. As during the QA of Fippyfest, it was stated that as far as they know, the server population of Teak is the largest server population of any EverQuest server ever. Keep that in mind, that EverQuest Teak server for a single server has the largest population of any server ever made. There have been popular servers in the past, and obviously, yes, there have been many more servers in the past. Like many of my servers that I played on no longer exist in EverQuest due to mergers. But it's still pretty amazing that in 2024, 25 years after launch, they are breaking records for single server attendance. But I want to take a quick moment because this was something we got revealed in Pax East about player numbers and just really how many players are actually playing EverQuest and how many players maxed out on EverQuest in its heyday up to about 2003. From 1999 to 2003, 4 years of success, really. The game hit peak player counts of around 400,000 players back then, which may not sound like much post-WoW, but before WoW, that was huge, especially in the West and especially with MMOs just kind of getting their feet under them. EverQuest player base now, 25 years after launch, sits at around 90,000 players, with potential to go over that, to over 100,000 players, especially around progression server launches. And yes, there are of course questions about how many of those players are actually, well, players, because EverQuest, like most older MMOs, has kind of a problem with boxing or botting, with people playing multiple characters on the same computer or on multiple computers or whatever. As hardware has gotten easier to use, it's become a bigger and bigger problem, especially with a game like EverQuest, which is so group focused and so necessary to have more people and not just solo things, there is a net benefit for many players to having a cleric with them, for example, beyond the mercenaries. But to be honest, we have no way of knowing just how many people that is. How many of those 90,000 players are botted players or boxed players? We don't know, so I'm not even going to try and speculate on how many players that would be and how many live players. So we're just going to go with the number of 90,000 players. And that really brings to light something kind of crazy to think about. 25 years after launch, as far as EverQuest is concerned, they have roughly 1/4 of their total player base. About 90,000 out of 400,000 peak players. That's just crazy to think about, that after that many years, they have seen less of a fall off than a single month of some current MMOs. All that's to say that EverQuest and EverQuest 2 are not huge MMOs by any means. Don't get me wrong on that, but they've also managed to maintain a healthy player base for over 2 decades, which is pretty incredible and shows how powerful a good MMO can be. These games have shown a tremendous amount of sticking power, and also shows to me why this IP may be one of the most underutilized IPs out there. Which, speaking of, let's talk about EverQuest 3. Or 4, technically, because EverQuest Online Adventures also existed. It wasn't mentioned at Fippy Fest, but it was mentioned during the Pax East panel, confirming that it is indeed in ideation and that they are currently hiring for the game. I think that with Fippy Fest, they were more focused on what is currently, what has been, instead of what can be. We'll have to look around the EG7 documents, Gen Chan's producers' letters later this year in the fall, and perhaps early 2025 for more news on any new EverQuest projects beyond the current 2 games. If they're on track, 2025 will continue to be the year to watch for those EverQuest 3 whispers to get a little bit louder. So if you'd been hoping for some big, huge announcement of EverQuest 3, which I think I've been hoping for a huge announcement for EverQuest 3 since 2017, then there were maybe a little bit disappointment, but overall, I think in general, Fippy Fest was a fun celebration of what EverQuest is and what EverQuest 2 is. And I want to give a moment here to Fading of the EverQuest show. Fading was the master of ceremonies for Fippy Fest, and I want to extend a heartfelt congratulations to this long-standing pillar of the EverQuest community. An EverQuest fan and content creator who creates some of the best and most well-produced content I have ever seen, often traveling the country to get interviews with EverQuest developers. I can't think of anyone more deserving and better suited for this role with his natural interview style and his ability to make developers feel comfortable. And speaking of developers, I think events like this are very important. It's really an important thing for us as players of these games to get to see the people that are making the worlds in which we are inhabiting, the developers that are putting in their hard work to create these things, to see their personalities, to see their sense of humor, to see their passion for the games they're making, that the games that they have devoted their lives to in many ways. If you're a fan of EverQuest or EverQuest 2, I'd really recommend at least going to watch the keynote of Fippy Fest, or maybe watch the QAs of each of the games, the game that you are most interested in, just to see their answers, see the developers' personalities. And on a personal note, I was at Fippy Fest. Not personally because there was no way I could afford to go, but in like a video that was shown there at Fippy Fest, and I am like stunned. I don't know how else to explain it. I'm just kind of shocked and stunned that this content creator journey has taken me to this point, and I have all of you to thank for that. So thank you so damn much for that. I won't make you sit through that video again. It was kind of embarrassing. I felt like it could be a hell of a lot better, but you can find it at this timestamp if you want to see it. Cheers to everyone, and I hope to see you all soon in Norath, whether that's in EverQuest 1 or soon on the Origin server on EverQuest 2. I covered both of those in this video right here if you want to get a little bit more info on what they are, especially the EverQuest 2 Origin server. And, you know, if you see my body anywhere in game, just know, well, first, you know, take a picture of it, share it with me on Twitter or Discord or whatever. But second, just know that it was definitely me dying in some heroic way, like, I don't know, facing down giants or lockjaw or something like that. And it certainly wasn't like, you know, drowning or dying to lich.